for everyone who's joining us. We are re-recording last night's discussion called The Art of Living with Sacred Intention. So thank you again to everyone who joined us yesterday. So today we're going to be discussing the topic of how to frame our lives as an offering and how to set an intention not only for every day, but for our daily lives, right? And really make that a part of our lifestyle and the way that we go through all of our activities. So to join us in this discussion, we have Simon Haas. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you so much, Sienna. Very happy to be here today.
Yeah, you as well. So whenever you're ready, we can get started.
So today we're looking at chapter 3, verse 9. And I want to welcome everyone who's watching to this Bhagavad Gita study group. It has been very exciting going through the verses of the Gita, and we're now at the beginning of chapter 3. So in this episode, we'll be looking at the enchanting legend of the Parijata tree. So it's a tale that illuminates the difference between what we might call small love and sacred love. And this particular story of Parijata has three lessons, three teachings. So we are picking up from November the 24th episode, episode number 57, in which we introduced Bhakti Yoga. And if you remember, in that episode, we discussed the difference between small love and sacred love. Small love being the love that emerges from our small human narrative. So it's very conditional, and it's a love that's temporary. So before beginning, I would like to start off with a small Mangala Charanam, an auspicious invocation, as we always do. He Shri Guru Jnana Dina Bandho Swananda Dataha Karunaika Sindho Brindavanasi Nahitavatara Prasidha Radha Pranaya Prachara Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you very much. A Mangalacharanam has a few different purposes. One of them is that, well, it's made up of a series of mantras. Man means mind, and tra means to release. So a mantra is something that releases the mind. That's one of the things it does. It does much more than that as well. What does it release the mind from? It releases the mind from suffering associated with time. So fear, lamentation, and confusion. So it essentially creates a sacred space. Sometimes we think that a sacred space, we hear the term a sacred space. We might think it's something kind of ephemeral, intangible. But a sacred space is actually very tangible. We know we're in a sacred space when we are in one because we're free from misery associated with time. There's a lot more to say on Mangalacharana, the tradition of Mangalacharana. Maybe we'll get a chance to do that in a future episode. But without further delay, let us move to verse 9 of chapter 3 in the Gita. So Krishna has explained that one cannot not act. So on the field of action, it's not possible not to act, not even for a moment. And so really the question becomes, how can we act in the best way? And Krishna, as we'll see, defines yoga as yoga karmasu kaushalam. Yoga is skillfulness in our action. So Krishna means action that is done without attachment to the results, and action that is done as an offering. So it's that particular element that we're looking at today. So, yagyartat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhana tadartam karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work binds one to this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain unattached and free from bondage. So, looking at the Sanskrit, you have the word karma bandhana, bound by action. So, action becomes binding, or action generates bondage in this world. And then you have the phrase mukta sangaha, free from attachment. In other words, acting without clinging to the results. So Krishna is essentially saying that work binds one in this world when it's done for any purpose other than an offering. And therefore, O son of Kunti, Kaunteya means son of Kunti. O son of Kunti, which is Arjuna, perform your actions for that divine purpose, freed from attachment. So, what does it mean to make our actions an offering? That's what we'll be exploring today. So, before doing that, let's quickly summarize what we looked at in the previous episode, episode number 57, when we looked at the difference between what we might call small love and sacred love. So, some sacred texts speak of what they speak about the purity of love. So that implies that what passes as love in everyday life can be contaminated or corrupted by ego, by the desire to manipulate or control, by narcissism, unkindness, false perception, selfish intent. So that's small love. And we find that small love in the Bhagavad Gita and the larger epic of the Mahabharata also. The very first verse, I don't know if anyone watching has joined us from the beginning, but the very first verse of the Bhagavad Gita is the blind emperor, Dhritarashtra, speaking. And he says, Dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsava mamaka pandavaschaiva kimakurvata sanjaya. So his words are filled with attachment, fear, and ego, illusory ego. And he has a love for his son Duryodhana. He's fearful that Duryodhana will meet an untimely end at Kurukshetra, and so he has affection for his son and the son and his Duryodhana and his brothers, but it's small love, and it's a divisive love, and it's exactly what leads to the battle of Kurukshetra. So he makes a distinction, if you recall, between my sons and the sons of Pandu. In other words, his sons and the sons of his brother. Even though the Pandavas, Arjuna and his brothers, their father died when they were just young boys, and they lived under the shelter of Dhritarashtra, and they saw him just as their own father. But yet he's making that division, because this is it's a divisive love. It's a conditional, divisive love that emerges from the story that's playing out in his mind. So the key features of small love are that it's based on false perception, and it's highly conditional, and that also makes it temporary. And so it's also limited to just a small circle of friends and relatives. By contrast, sacred love operates beyond the stories we enact and the play of form in this world. So it's sacred love is not an accidental venture, like it's not a love we fall into, but rather it's a capacity that's awakened and strengthened. And in Sanskrit, sacred love is known as bhakti. And bhakti yoga is the yoga practice of culturing such unconditional love by directing it to the soul of all souls. So that's a short kind of recap of what we explored in the previous episode on this topic. And now we go to the three lessons of Parijata. So once there was a young student named Gautam, and he was at the ashram of his teacher, a rishi or sage expert in bhakti lore. And this hermitage was located on the bank of a river, and it was encircled by a forest of mango trees and creepers. And peacocks danced in the open spaces. And one day the teacher needed to go on a journey. So he asked Gautam to tend to his beautiful Parijata tree. And a Parijata tree is a variety of fragrant jasmine. Legend has it actually that the Parijata is one of the 5 celestial trees, and its flowers, the fragrance of its flowers helps one remember past lives. So the Parijata tree, stood at the farthest end of the garden, and it was heavily laden with blooms. And Gautam's teacher, who would use those flowers for his daily worship of Krishna, emphasized the importance of caring for those flowers. So the rishi set off on his journey, and Gautam began tending the celestial tree. He collected fresh water from the river and would sprinkle it carefully on the tree's buds. So those of you who are watching and who've been to India, you'll see outside the large temples, you often have vendors of flowers and flower garlands, and they'll take water and they'll just like sprinkle it all over the flower garlands in order to keep them fresh in the heat. So this is what Gautam was doing, and there were thousands of buds, and it took him a long time. And that evening, after the sun had set, countless star-like flowers opened out, and it permeated the air with a heavenly fragrance. The delightful Parijata flowers there, they were white like milk, with a beautiful orange-red center, and Gautam's heart soared with delight. The next day, Gautam returned to the tree, and his heart sank. The Parijata flowers he had tended to so carefully had all dropped from the tree, every last one of them. He walked over a carpet of fallen flowers, and his heart was filled with sadness. He thought, maybe I haven't given enough care to these flowers. So again, Gautam cleaned and watered all the buds. This time he also spent the day wiping each of the tree's leaves tenderly with a damp cloth. And as expected, the tree exploded into life at dusk. And again, the following morning, all the flowers had fallen. The young Gautam was concerned. Maybe someone's plucking flowers or disturbing the tree at night. So he decided to keep vigil. And sure enough, thousands of Parijata flowers opened at dusk. And the light breeze was filled with the scent of fragrant jasmine. And as the sun, at sunrise, Gautam, who had stayed up all night, at sunrise, with tears in his eyes, he watched all of these Parijata flowers in full bloom falling from the tree, one by one. So several days later, the rishi, the sage, returned to his hermitage from his journey. And Gautam told him everything that happened. And the sage smiled knowingly. He had intentionally asked Gautam to care for the Parijata flowers so that he could impart the 3 yoga teachings of Parijata to him. So sitting on the veranda with Gautam, the rishi shared an ancient tale. He said there was once a king who had a beautiful daughter named Parijata. And this sensitive girl fell in love with Surya, the sun god, as he rode his fiery chariot from the east to the west in the sky. "Leave your kingdom and be mine," the sun god propositioned. And Parijata followed her beloved. But the sun soon tired of her and grew cold. Abandoning her, he fled back to the sky, leaving the young princess to die of a broken heart. The king, filled with sorrow, cremated the princess's body, and from her ashes arose a single tree with the purest of white flowers, each containing a blazing orange heart. Since the tree can't bear the sight of the sun, her flowers open only after the sun has left the sky, and upon the touch of the sun's first rays at dawn, all her flowers immediately fall to the ground and die. So the Rishi explained, Parijata teaches us about love, loss, and heartbreak. The love of this world is ephemeral. If the sun could witness the true beauty of Parijata, he would never have left her. But Parijata reveals her celestial beauty at night, the one place the sun is unable to go. And so as the sun crosses the sky, all he ever sees is a pitiable tree and a carpet of wilting flowers. Our true beauty is hidden also. The beauty of the soul can't be seen with the external eye or the light of the sun. For those who haven't yet learned to see with the eyes of sacred love, the soul remains unseen. This is the first teaching of Parijata, the teacher concluded. And for this reason, Parijata is sometimes known as the tree of sorrow. Gautam was eager now to know the second teaching of Parijata. And the Rishi said, come back tomorrow and I'll teach you. So that night, Gautam found it difficult to sleep. He had a restless night as he thought about the story of Parijata. The sun was destined never to see Parijata's beauty, and Gautam wondered how much beauty in life was hidden from him also. So the next day, Gautam returned to his teacher's hermitage, his teacher's ashram. And the Rishi began to explain the second teaching of Parijata. He said the aim of Bhakti Yoga is to expand our love by deepening it and widening it. So there are two ways you can do that. The first is to direct our love to every individual in our life. And that's a little bit like watering individual buds and leaves of the Parijata plant. It's a well-meaning approach, but not one without limitations. As there are buds and leaves we won't be able to see or reach, so we'll tend to the buds and leaves that are closest to us, and we'll neglect those that are outside our reach. So the Rishi explained, instead of focusing on individual buds and leaves, we can focus on the tree's root, which is the source of the entire tree. And if we water Parijata's root with love, we automatically nourish the entire tree. The water of our love and affection will flow to every part of the plant. And that's a wiser approach. So in Bhakti Yoga, we widen our circle of love by directing it to the source, by directing it to the sacred center. And the sages and mystics explain that the soul of all souls is the root of the tree of life. We are a spark of the divine. Our own individual consciousness is a ray of the supreme consciousness. Our existence depends on this supreme consciousness, just as the leaves and flowers of a plant depend on its root. So Krishna, our dearest friend and inner guide, is present within our soul. And just as the root of a tree hidden beneath the ground is invisible to the eye, so Krishna, the root of existence, is hidden from outward-looking senses. Krishna is seen only by the inward vision of the yogi or yogini, whose heart is overflowing with sacred love. So by offering love to Krishna, the supreme source, the soul of every soul, our love automatically extends to all beings without prejudice, without limitation. And by touching the sacred source through yoga, the sacred source of life, we make our circle of love the widest it can be. We will see all beings as family, and we have a space in our heart for everyone, even those we haven't met. No one is a stranger. Importantly, the Rishi continued, importantly, if someone doesn't have love and affection in their hearts for all beings, then they haven't developed bhakti for Krishna, the soul of all souls. Likewise, if our devotion to Krishna doesn't automatically lead us to love others, then that devotion is false or it's incomplete. If it doesn't engender kindness and compassion in the heart, then it isn't bhakti. So true yogis and yoginis, they see the happiness and suffering of others as their very own. So widening our circle of love by directing it to the sacred center, the root of the tree of life, is the second lesson of Parijata. And at this point, the teacher took the boy to the Parijata tree. And at the base of the tree, leaning against one of its roots, was a small, charming figure of Krishna. Gautam wondered how he didn't notice it before. He must have been so preoccupied with watering the buds and leaves and the branches above that he failed to see it. Now Gautam, of course, he was eager to know the third teaching of Parijata. So the next day, before dawn, Gautam returned to his teacher's ashram, which at this time in the morning was illuminated by the full moon and countless stars. And the rishi had his eyes closed, and he was deeply absorbed in meditation. And Gautam sat right next to him, facing his deity of Krishna. And he felt an indescribable peace in the presence of his teacher. As dawn approached, flowers began to fall one by one from the Parijata tree, and they rained down upon the charming deity of Krishna in an offering of love. What beauty! Heaps of fallen blossoms collected on the dew-drenched grass. It was an enchanting sight, and it took Gautam's breath away. So Gautam watched as the rishi came out of his meditation. And the rishi turned to Gautam and explained, the Parijata represents the transition from small love to sacred love. Our nature is to love. The soul is constructed and destined to love. And yet the small love and affection of this world is ultimately a source of sorrow. So we can choose which quality of love we hold in our heart. And we can transform our small love into sacred love through the alchemical practice of bhakti yoga. So now the rishi collected a handful of delicate, fragrant flowers from the ground. And due to their vermilion orange core, the ancients considered the flowers symbolic of fire, the purifying flame of awareness. And Gautam looked at his teacher intently. And the rishi was dressed in saffron cloth dyed using the same fiery orange hearts of the Parijata flower. The rishi continued speaking. He said, in the daytime, the Parijata flowers are closed. They don't reveal their true celestial beauty and fragrance. And likewise, the small love of this world, mixed with self-interest and 1,000 longings, doesn't reflect the true unearthly beauty of the soul. How can it? But during the night, which represents the inner practice of the yogi or the yogini, these flowers of devotion release their full fragrance and beauty. So Parijata experienced the sorrow of this world and the futility of small love. And instead of offering her heart to this mortal world, she now saves her flowers for the worship of Krishna, the root of the tree of life. The origin of the tree of life is known by countless names. Krishna means all attractive. Another of his names is Shokanashana, destroyer of sorrow. And I'm actually remembering one other name is Vriksha, tree. One of Krishna's names is Vriksha, meaning the tree of life. So Krishna removes the suffering of those who take shelter of him through yoga and gives them sacred love. He transforms our small love into sacred love. And that's the third and most confidential yoga teaching of Parijata. So the rishi gave a handful of flowers to Gautam, and together they made an offering to Krishna at the base of the tree. And the rishi warned, be careful what you wish for. Parijata fulfills whatever one's desires under her shade. So as you offer these flowers to Krishna, the Lord of your heart, ask only for sacred love. And in a captivating melody, the rishi began singing an ancient Sanskrit prayer. And hearing that heartfelt song, Gautam longed to attain pure devotion to Krishna, the soul of the universe. He felt happier than he had ever been. And as he sat in the shade of this Parijata tree, he knew that his wish had already come true. So that this is the story of Parijata with the three teachings of Parijata. And they help us understand that aspect of karma yoga. So if you remember in previous episodes, we looked at, gave an overview of karma yoga and broke it down into 3 steps. One is to be true to our own nature. The second is let go of the fruits, let go of the outcome. And the third is make your work an offering. Make your life an offering. So in this particular episode, we focused a little bit more on that. And how to do that in our daily life is really the practice of bhakti yoga. But I would like to share one way of doing this. It's not so much an exercise as like a daily practice, really, that I've personally found really helpful. So we tend to get up in the morning and as soon as we wake up, I don't know what we do, check our phones or just get out of bed and immediately start our day. And one thing leads to another, and we're getting ready for work, and we're troubled by various kind of to-dos, our to-do list and our anxieties. And one thing happens after another in such rapid succession that by the end of the day, we may even wonder how swiftly the day has gone by. So this is a method of grounding ourselves in the practice of bhakti yoga before even putting one foot on the ground. So just after waking up and we're still in bed, we haven't even stepped onto the ground yet, we can think ahead of the day that we're about to go through, that we're about to experience. And we can envisage that day as being like a beautiful, fragrant flower that we offer to Krishna. Or better still, that we offer to Sri Radha, the goddess of sacred love. And so in our morning meditation, before even beginning our day, we can place that flower at her feet. Today, I offer this day to you, Sri Radha. Please guide me so I can be an instrument in your service. Please guide me, Krishna, so that I can be an instrument in your service. And then we begin our day, and we begin it with that powerful intention. And the same thing at the end of the day, rather than I don't know, checking our phones and then dropping off to sleep, we can end the day with a sacred intention. So, as we can reflect for just a few moments, reflect on what occurred in that day, and offer that day like a beautiful fragrant flower, like a Parijata flower. We can offer it at the feet of Sri Radha and Krishna. And then as we go to sleep, we'll long for the next day to arrive. So we can offer an even more beautiful flower to Sri Krishna and to the goddess of sacred love, Sri Radha. So this is one way in which we can um, enter into our day, and thresholds are in most mystical paths and in many traditions, thresholds are considered very important. Physical thresholds, like as you enter a building, as you enter a house, they'll often in India place mango leaves at the threshold. So thresholds in space, but also thresholds in time. The start of the day and the end of the day are powerful moments where we can create our intent, we can fix our intent, and begin our day and end our day with a mood of devotion in the practice of bhakti yoga. So we'll stop here, and and we've had a chance here to look at how to make what we do in our everyday life a sacred offering.
Yeah, thank you so much, Simon. It's so true what you're saying, right, about the way that we start the day and end the day. But I love how you frame that as actually, an important threshold and actually kind of a really important moment, right, in general and in our day. I've never thought about it like that. And then thinking about, not just how we start the day or end the day, but we might be thinking about all of the things that we do, right? Like daily tasks that everyone has to do, like cooking or, tending to family members or going to work. How can we start approaching that kind of with this mentality in mind?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, no, that's so important. So the practice of bhakti yoga is really quite beautiful. It's to give like an example of how that might work. If we're cooking something for, I don't know, we're in a rush and we're cooking something and we're not even able to put a lot of attention into what we're doing, it's a totally different experience than if we're cooking for someone who we deeply love and care about. So, say we have, imagine we have someone who we haven't seen for a very close friend, we haven't seen them for 10 years, and they come and visit us. And we remember, as we're cooking, we're remembering the times we've spent together. We will select the very best ingredients. We will think about what particular kind of dishes that person really loves. So, in the same way, in the practice of bhakti yoga, when everyday tasks, including cooking, we do them as an offering of love to Sri Radha and Krishna, then even simple tasks become infused with great purpose and attention, just in that way. And rather than being something that we rush over and we're bored or perhaps even lazy to do, but we have to do them, they become acts of devotion. And so when that's one powerful aspect about bhakti yoga. We often hear about mindfulness, which is a very helpful practice. When the bhakti yogi or the bhakti yogini is engaged in everyday tasks, because it's what they do is driven by sacred love. Automatically, there's presence and mindfulness imbued in what they're doing. So it has a very different quality.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And I think definitely something that we should try to take into account as we go through tasks that might seem insignificant, right? Kind of shifting that mentality from, this is for me or this is not important to, this is something that I am offering, right? And trying to put that effort and that love there, and maybe using that to kind of bridge our journey from small love to sacred love, if I think that's what I understood from what you said.
I love the way you've put that, Sienna.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much again for joining us to continue to explore this topic. This is our last class with you in 2025, but we look forward to many more in 2026. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sienna. Thank you, everyone who's watching.
Yeah. Thank you again, everyone who joined us. We will not be having class Thursday, December 25th, but we look forward to seeing you for our last class of 2025 on Monday, December 29th. See you soon.